Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Let's Talk Adoption. I am your host, Kim King, and I'm excited to speak with our special guest today, a social worker with a few decades under her belt now. Linda Rotz is here to share some answers to some very important questions that a lot of families have on their minds when they're entering into the world of adoption and they feel a little apprehensive about what they're going to be asked and how they're going to be evaluated. So we have Linda here today, and we're very excited to ask her some of these questions that are on your mind. You know, one of the parts of adoption that makes families kind of nervous, hopeful parents who are prospective adoptive parents wanting to bring a child into their family, it makes them nervous, right? The home study. And it's common to have questions or worries, but sometimes we're too shy to ask the questions that really matter, that are really on our minds, that are kind of a little bit distracting, occupying space. So to help clear the air, I am so excited to have Linda Rotz, an experienced social worker who has guided countless families through the home study process. And Linda is here to answer the questions that are on everyone's mind, but are rarely spoken out loud. And Linda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kim. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to share some of the information that I know might help ease your mind about home studies and not make them so scary.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and Linda has a great way of making big things seem less daunting. So I'm really glad that she's the one we get to talk to today. And Linda, you have around 28, nearing 30 years of experience as a social worker. Can you kind of tell us a bit about, because I know you had a first half of your career as a
Mhm.
social worker, and now you have an act two, if you will, of your career. So tell us a little bit, like frame of reference, what's your experience as a social worker?
So for the first half of my career, I started out, as many do, as a case manager in the child welfare system and foster care. And I wound up working as director of adoptions for an agency hired by the state of Florida to do case management and adoption work.
Yes.
So I did that for about 13 or 14 years, and then came to Lifetime and
Hmm.
helped open up the Florida office of Lifetime. And
Hmm.
I've been director of adoptions here for 14 years. So yeah, I'm nearing 30 years, feeling very old.
It's amazing. We were talking about how those years do start to make us feel old, but it's
Mhm,
consistency, right? And
mhm,
continuing to do what you love with a great team around you. And that makes you just really want to come to work every day and keep helping people as they call in, they email in, they text, and you have the skills to really help people.
mhm,
And you are currently still a home study provider. So if you're in Florida, need someone,
mhm.
I'm sure we'll put Linda's contact info out there for you, or I can connect you to Linda. And yes, she is our social worker for Lifetime Adoption, the agency where she works, which is a licensed child placing agency in the state of Florida. So, Linda, let's jump into these first 5 questions that families often wonder but are too shy to ask, and then we'll cover our next 5 questions that families are too shy to ask in a second episode. So this is going to be a part one, part two. I also want to mention, and Linda will probably mention this as well, every state is different. We're not talking specifics. Don't take anything set in stone, but this is more of a conversation to help understand like the mindset and what to expect as you go through a home study. And this is primarily going to be geared around private domestic adoption, which is primarily infants, but sometimes children who are already born. So, Linda, let's get started with question number 1 that families often wonder about. They're nervous because sometimes they think they're being evaluated to see what's wrong with them. So, are you evaluating families to find problems or to help approve them to adopt?
So that's a really good question. And that's actually one of the biggest fears, is that we are judgy, that we're judging you. But the fact of the matter is, it is a partnership between you, the family, and the social worker. And our job is to approve you, but we also need to ensure that a child is going to be placed in a safe and stable environment. So while the process involves evaluating your life, your background, your home, to ensure stability, the primary goal of the social worker is not to find reasons to deny you, but to rule you in, if that makes sense. So our focus is really to find approval and support for you. Rule in versus rule out. We, when we're doing home studies, we're looking to find families for our children or the children that need to find homes. And we're looking for a family that can do that for a child. And there are certain things that we look at, which I'm sure that we'll be talking about, as we move forward. But there are different sections of information that we evaluate during the process. But all the time we're looking to approve you. So we don't look at it in a negative fashion. We actually look at it, how can we make this work, instead of, oh, this isn't going to work. It's how can we make this work, if that makes sense.
I love that. And I think that helps provide a lot of relief for prospective adoptive parents. And when you say you're looking for stability, can you just kind of summarize, what do you mean by stability? What does that look like?
Well, there are many aspects of that. A safe, stable environment could include, the home inspection and making sure that you have like safety precautions in place, maybe like a fire extinguisher, or you have smoke alarms, or there's certain, it's safety things. And if you don't have those, then we just educate you to get those. So there's always a way to fix it if we find something that may not fall into a category of approval, then we're going to show you how to get there. So it's not a matter of instant denial for anything. It's really, we're just helping you get to where you want to be and have an approved home study.
Yeah, that all seems really doable. If a home study provider visits your home and sees that you're missing a fire extinguisher somewhere where it needs to be, well, then she's just going to tell you to go get one. So you go get one, and now you've met that requirement. And of course, the home study is made up of a lot more than just the physical visit to your home. There are other components, such as your background checks, your physical to ensure you're in good health, to meet the physical needs of a child and everything. And then, the financial aspect to make sure you can provide for the child. What other things are looked at in the home study beyond just the house?
So you touched on a couple of things, but basically you have to make sure that you are a resident of the United States. So we have to, prove it. Everything that we do, we have to prove. So we have to have supporting documentation for what we're evaluating. So one is your background, how you grew up. Another is your financials. You don't have to be rich. Nobody has to be rich. You just have to be able to live within your means. So that doesn't mean that you don't have, if you have $1 million house or you live in $100,000 house, it doesn't matter. If you're renting, it doesn't matter. As long as you're living within your means and you can provide for your family. And then, as far as a home goes, the home inspection is the same thing. If there's a place for your child to sleep, it's a good, safe home. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be safe and stability in your marriage. So we would be looking at things like that. Your relationship. We look at references. We get references from family members. We get references from friends. So there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle that we evaluate. Your background checks are a big factor. So you will have to get federal, state, local, sex abuse. Some states require 911 calls. And I think I might have said local, but 911 calls. And some states also require going into the civil records. In Florida, we don't require that, but some states do. So those are some of the things that we look at when we're evaluating a home study, but you are part of that process the entire way. and
Hmm.
we are open about everything that we do. And if we have any questions, we ask them. And for you, to me, the most important thing is complete honesty. I don't care what you've done in your background. You know, um, there are some things that are probably, you know, that are more serious than others. But most of the times, if you're honest with what you've done in your background, there's something that you've learned from it, you've moved on, and you have a different lifestyle. Those are positives in my mind. It's not a negative to have made poor choices in your background, but have, remedied them and you're leading a different kind of lifestyle now. It's positive. So it's about what we've learned from what we've done. And so I say never be embarrassed by your background because
Right.
because it shapes who you are. So
Hmm. I love that. And I think that will put many families at ease. And the reality is, until you actually walk through the home study, you're never going to really be truly relieved of any nervousness about this. And the good thing is, home studies can normally be done within a couple of months, right? 6 to 8 weeks in some cases, 2 to 3 months in some cases.
well, part of it is um, you as the family um, providing the information that is needed in a timely manner. Some things take a little while because sometimes it does take a little while to get the background checks, but there are other aspects of the home study that needs to be completed by you. One is a large questionnaire about your background, which is your social history, and a lot of the questionnaires or the information that home study writers request from you are designed so that you can communicate between each other and have the same point of view. So, in other words, they're designed for you to talk about it. Like, how would you discipline your child? Is a good example. You know, you both have come from different backgrounds and may have had different discipline situations in your growing up life, but together you're going to be raising a child. It's something you need to decide. Like, how are you going to discipline? So, so sometimes those things take time for some people. So 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 part of the equation of how long it takes is really how long it takes for you to complete what you need to do, and then the social worker goes into the rest of it. I
Hmm.
don't know. I'd say on the average 2 months. I
Yeah.
know I usually tell everybody once I get the information, I can get it done within 30 days as long as there's no hiccups.
Hmm.
Um, but I've seen them. I'm working on one right now that's in its 6th month, and it's not bad. It's just a slow process for the family,
Hmm.
and that's okay because maybe that's what they need. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Right. Yeah. And of course, every adoption professional that you may be partnered with may have deadlines on your home study. So be sure that you're aware of that and being really proactive about completing your steps and getting the paperwork and documents and the necessary things in place and getting those back to your social worker for your home study as soon as you can. It's kind of like volleyball. You want to keep volleying back and forth. And that's how, when you keep every time the ball comes into your court, you put it back to your social worker as soon as you can. And it doesn't mean to rush through it, it just means to focus. Make sure your home study is your focus and your priority because it's really not going to do itself. It
Yeah.
takes a concerted effort to complete, and there's a ton of paperwork. The only comparison I can imagine is like if you were buying a house. Do you remember all those documents you had to sign? And you didn't really probably read through a ton of that. It was just like, well, if I want the house, I have to sign this, right? But a home study has a ton of questions and things you need to fill out that do require your thought. And of course, like Linda said, your complete honesty. And that kind of segues into a question I want to jump down to. How honest is too honest?
Ha ha ha.
That's a good one.
It is a good one. And this is what I'd like to say. I'd say there's no such thing as being too honest. Um, Sometimes it's the way that it's projected, um, that could, set off a red flag. And
Give me an example. Like just a
um,
Doesn't have to be
Okay,
recent,
so
obviously,
this
privacy.
could be a little bit of a crude example, but let's just say your children are in the room, right? And you talk about some, indiscretion that you had with somebody, at some point in time, and your kids are old enough to understand what you're saying. And it just kind of, a home study writer will look at that and say, well, okay, if they're, open and they're talking openly like this with their child in the room, how is it later? And that's not saying that it's the wrong thing. It's just, it's like a little trigger. Okay, that means that we're just going to be asking some more questions or observing differently, because that could have been a nervousness, answering the question that way. Or it could be that's the way they are, and maybe we need to have a little education on discretion and child appropriate discussions.
Yeah.
So that's like one, and that was very off the cuff. So, but
Yeah.
it's little things like that. But really and truly, you want to be honest about whatever you've done in your background. And because we can always figure out a way to make it work. If you have learned a lesson, um, if you use that lesson to help other people. I mean, there's so many things that people do in their past, and and a lot of times that education has been beneficial in the future.
Hmm.
So, and I like to explain those kind of things. Oftentimes we have families that, may have had like an alcohol issue or even a drug issue. And you think that's an automatic disqualifier, but it really isn't, because what are you doing now?
Hmm.
And so those are the questions that we ask, and the only thing about it is, that we have to validate it. So like, are you in AA? Are actively in AA? Or, what have you been doing over the last 10 years or 6 years, So don't be afraid to talk about it. Don't be afraid about, to talk about trauma, because we have to know so that we know how to move forward and help you um, be selected for the right child,
Hmm.
a child that could really use your strengths. An example of that might be um, somebody that had a childhood trauma or maybe had some abuse in their background, right? And has overcome that. And hey, wouldn't that be great, to, you know, be matched with a child that may have had a similar circumstance, because you know how to walk through it and you've successfully walked through it. What a strength that is.
Hmm.
So those are the things that I think about when I'm doing home studies.
Hmm. And so those are things that don't make home studies fail, right? Just naturally
Correct.
having a history, naturally having had less than ideal circumstances that you were
Mhm.
in at the time or choices that you made, but you learned from it. And
Mhm.
Linda, I know we've had conversations in the past where we've talked about how you would want to know what's their plan if there's relapse.
Yes.
If it was a
Yes.
substance,
Yes.
dependency, right?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
you kind of gave me an example one time. Well, if the husband relapses, what's your plan? And the wife will, take the children, go to her mom's, and then the husband needs to enter into a program. That could be their plan. Something like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm. Yep. It really is, making sure that you have thought of everything. Relapse is very common, in the world of addiction. It just is.
Hmm.
And does that mean that is the end of the world? No. You, you jump up, you step up, and you walk through that door with confidence that you're going to get back on track. I say
Hmm.
that every time I eat mashed potatoes. So, 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 we all have something, and
Hmm.
it's how we deal with it is really shows the character of who you are and the strengths that you have.
So I know this is a bit of a dicey question next, Linda, and every state is different. But what kinds of things actually make a home study fail?
So that's a good question, and I think almost every state is the same in this. Um, Major red flags are criminal convictions for child abuse, domestic violence, or serious felonies. In most states, if there is any kind of child abuse, that's an automatic disqualifier. It just is. Um, Domestic violence is also a disqualifier. But so, like, if there was, I would want to know the circumstances. I would want to know what happened. I would want to know the outcome before any kind of decision would be made. Serious felonies are the same. Murder, that's an automatic disqualifier. But there are other serious felonies that, you know, could have happened 20 years ago, could have been because you might have been, you know, with the wrong crowd. I don't know. But the more we know, the more we can assess.
Mm-hmm.
But those are things that would raise red flags for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Significant dishonesty.
Mm.
If you don't tell the truth, how can we be sure that anything that you tell us is the truth? So that would be on backgrounds, that would be on your finances, that would be health issues, you know, a home environment that's not safe, somebody living in your home, but you didn't tell us. So, so the minute we find out that there's a discrepancy and there's been some dishonesty, it just makes us dig more, and it makes the level of distrust is always in the back of our head.
Mm-hmm.
So it's better to be honest about everything and let us work through it. Because the minute that we find out dishonesty, it is just like we're putting our name on a document that says we believe a child is going to be in a safe and stable environment. And if we can't feel comfortable about that, we can't put our name on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about dishonesty.
Yeah.
Then an unsafe home, exposed wiring, unsafe storage of medications, guns. Um, they have to
Guns,
be
like, right. Go ahead.
they have to be in, they have to be secured.
Yes.
We educate you on that. We educate families on where to store medicine, where to keep your guns. We educate on pool safety. We educate on SIDS. So there are certain things that we do. It's a requirement that we educate you on those particular items. But if those
Linda,
items are not addressed in the home, then we can't pass a home study.
for new parents who don't know what SIDS is yet, you educate
Sudden
on SIDS.
infant
Can you?
death. Yeah, sudden infant death syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
It's when it's unexplained, when a child, um, you know, doesn't wake up in the morning, and it can be, unsafe in the crib because you have like blankets, or they're sleeping, on their tummy with their mouth in the mattress, or there's just certain ages that you really have to kind of watch that.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kind of make sure that it is understood, when a baby comes home.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Your pediatrician does the same thing.
Yes.
So you'll hear it from a lot of places.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so and then the last one is financial instability.
Mm.
If you're not financially stable, we can't attest that you're able to be financially stable when you have a child in your home and there's extra expenses and stressors. So those are the things that kind of would raise red flags.
And what about income requirements? Are there income requirements?
The only income requirement that I look at is if you're able to live within your means.
Mm-hmm.
So you should be able to put a little in your savings account and pay your bills. And when a child comes into the home, your bills are going to get higher, you know. So you just kind of look and see where they are, and you can tell too because some of the documents that we have to collect are your tax records, and oftentimes we get information from your employers, and then oftentimes then we'll also ask for bank statements. And it seems, you know, like that should be very private, and how dare you look at that? But it really is to help you. Because
Mm-hmm.
if we see something that, maybe we'll see something that can help you, then we're going to say it.
Mm-hmm.
If we see that, I don't think you can do it right now. Is there another source of income that you have? Is there something you didn't think about? Did you forget about your 401k? It's it's trying to help, not trying to say no. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's financially, it's just live within your means,
Right.
basically.
Right. And so if you live in a house that you inherited and you're able to pay for the upkeep and the taxes, then your actual stated income doesn't need to be as high as someone else. Everyone's got a different
Yes,
situation, and
yes.
the social worker will evaluate you as a whole based on your unique circumstances. And this is really just about meeting the minimum state requirements. What does it take to make sure that a child is safe and cared for? The minimum. I want to speak for a moment about our sponsor, the Lifetime Adoption Foundation. It's a nonprofit that exists to give back to the people most deeply impacted by adoption. For birth parents, the foundation offers educational scholarships, a way to invest in their future after placing a child for adoption. For those considering adoption, there are free resources and support tools to help them explore their options with clarity and care. And for children who may be more difficult to match with adoptive families, like older kids, siblings, or those with special medical needs, the foundation provides grant funding to help make those adoptions possible. You can truly make a difference. Learn more or donate at lifetimeadoptionfoundation.org. And so, Linda, in our world today, there are many different ways of living life, many different personalities, many different approaches. Do you judge a family's marriage, parenting style, or faith? Is that part of your role as a home study provider? Are you judging them?
That word is so judgy. It's
Yes.
just so judgy.
Uh-huh.
So I prefer not to say that I'm judging you, because I know it feels that way. And it's the
Yeah.
first thing that you think of. But really and truly, we're evaluating you, that you're providing a safe and stable and nurturing environment for a child. So it's a little bit different than being judgy. It's like, do they have the strength to meet the needs of this particular child? Do do they have a safe environment that could meet what a child needs? Do they have a stable marriage? And do they have good communication skills between themselves, to provide, good guidance to a child? Those are the things that we're looking at. And we're looking for all of that in a positive way. We're not looking to say, oh, wow, he just looked at her funny when she just answered that question. Yeah, we might notice that, but then it's how it was responded to. We'll be looking at that more, and he might compliment what she said. And so for for me and for most, it's we're looking at your marriage and how you support each other, how we will talk about how you manage conflict between each other. Um, we'll talk about goals. Like, do you have goals? What are your expectations of each other? Again, I talked about this a little bit before, but like, you need to talk about your parenting philosophy. Like, how are you going to parent? You need to, be open-minded about, if you have other children in the home and you're bringing a new child in the home, how's that going to look? How are you going to discipline? Really and truly, I believe every child is disciplined differently. because every child comes into the home at a different time and in a different headspace. The family's in a different time. There's a lot of difference. So there's a lot of things that happen that are different between the different ages of the children. Children coming into the home is the same thing. You have to think about how's that going to look? How is that going to, affect the other children? We see that. We talk about that with you. So those are the things that we're kind of evaluating. And if you think that you had a wrong answer, or if I think maybe, you could use a little more education on that, then a home study writer is doing their job if they're providing you with tools to get what you need so that you can have an approved home study.
Hmm.
That's our goal, is to approve you. It's not to not approve you. So, so we look at that. We look at faith, and it's not about what faith you are. It's about having a support system. Even if not if you don't go to church, you still need to have a support system. What do you believe in? Who's there for you? Um, and we look at cultural fit. If you request like specific religious upbringing, we want to make sure that the child that's going into your home fits that.
Hmm.
So, again, it's about strengths and needs. I talk about that a lot. You look at the needs of whatever child is coming into your home and the strengths of the family environment and um, social history and beliefs. And and that's really what we look at.
Right. And for the most part, you're gathering the information to make sure that that is addressed in the report you'll be writing, more of the narrative of who this family is. And you're also, like you said, evaluating, like, let's say it's an older child that already has maybe some faith upbringing a bit. Is it going to mesh well between that child and that specific family? And I also
Mhm.
want to add in here that we are also including single adoptive parents in our conversation. So if we're talking about couples, just know that you are also included in this. One more quick question. Is our house good enough, or are we missing something we didn't realize? People are nervous about that.
People are always nervous about that, and I always tell everybody before I come, I know this isn't like you're not selling your home. You don't need to put cookies in the oven so it smells good when I walk in the door. I'd rather see real life. I want to see how you live. I want to see the everyday. I want to see when you come home from work and you throw your, you know, purse on the couch and you take off your shoes by the front door and you get comfortable. That's the kind of thing that I would prefer to see. And so good enough for a home study generally means your home is safe, right? It's functional, right? It's clean. It doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be luxurious. We focus on child safety, structural stability, appropriate things are working. There's not like, a leaky bathroom and there's, a big, I don't know, moldy stain that hasn't been fixed.
Or like 10 litter boxes in the living room.
Yeah, or litter
You
boxes in
know.
the living room. I think there was one time I had a family that had like carpeting and the carpeting ended, but they didn't have, like a piece of molding to like hold it down. And so that piece of that piece of carpeting was just popping up all the time and you could trip. And so, before I passed the home study, I asked them to have that fixed. That's
Hmm.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If we see anything in the home that we don't think is right and we can't approve it, then we're just going to give you the tools to fix, figure it out and get it fixed.
Yeah, so the
So,
tools, the education, the resources, and so sometimes it's a concept that helps you course correct. So now you're in compliance with just meeting your basic requirements of your state.
and if you kind of want to know what some of those things are, um, safety equipment, like
Mhm.
I mentioned before, smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, near the sleeping areas, a working fire extinguisher. If you have older children, covered electrical outlets, um, secure storage like your cleaning supplies and your medicine, anything poisonous, like, you know, for some people it may seem like common sense, but other people, don't think of that. It's not common sense because they haven't been exposed to having to learn that or think about that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like I used to keep all of my cleaning supplies underneath my sink, in my kitchen. Well, that's not a good place to put it if you have a toddler. So, just put it up somewhere else, until they're not toddlers anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, safe sleeping space. We always want to make sure that there's a designated bedroom. If it's if it's a newborn, of course, they can sleep in a, in a bed in the parents' room for a little while, but there does need to be a designated space when the time comes for them to move out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we get
Um,
that question a lot with people who are maybe just living in a smaller space until they need
mhm,
to move to a bigger one.
yeah. Um, and it's just a designated room. Like I realize, when I'm doing a home study, the child's not there yet. So that doesn't mean that you have to have the space already ready. You just have to have the space available. There has to be a spot, and if that spot is being used as an office right now, but that that's going to be the baby's room, then that's going to be the baby's room. So it just needs to be, out loud designated that that's where it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's basically it. Locks on the doors, those kind of things. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid of the home inspection. Just don't, because
Do you
if
do you give them a checklist?
we do have a checklist, sometimes I provide a checklist, but most of the time as I don't. Um, I don't really need to. That was more of a foster care thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when we were in foster care, and I'm regressing back to foster care just to let you know. Sometimes we would work with families, and the goal in foster care is really reunification. If a family has lost the ability to parent their children, they do have the a- ability to try to work through some of the issues so the children can come back home, right? So, oh, see, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
So a checklist,
so
maybe.
the checklist was important for them to have,
Yes,
so that
something
they can go through
specific.
their home. And a lot of times when you're working with families that are in crisis like that, it's important. And it's even important for home study families because things can get overwhelming when there's too many things to do. You just take it in small sections. So that's what I used to do. And I still do that with home study families too. It's just like, do this section first, and then you won't feel overwhelmed. Do this section first, and then you won't feel overwhelmed. But the checklist and, going into a home and finding things, it's just, okay, so we found something. So now we fix it. It's
Mhm.
okay.
I
No big
love
deal.
that.
Yeah.
That's great advice and great insight too. So don't be nervous, don't be scared, be honest, full disclosure, and understand that the social worker you're hiring, you are choosing the social worker who helps you with your home study. She's there as a support and an ally and wants to see you be successful. So that's going to wrap up the first section of this conversation, these first 5 questions. And we will see you in the next section for the next 5 questions with Linda. And we are so thankful that you are choosing to tune in to Let's Talk Adoption. Remember, you can write to us at letstalkadoption.com. You can share your comments, feedback, questions, show ideas, guest ideas, suggestions for the show. Please feel free to keep the communication going through letstalkadoption.com, and be sure to subscribe as well so that you never miss an episode. And remember, you can also catch our episodes on YouTube and wherever podcasts are aired. So thank you, Linda, for joining me for this episode of Let's Talk Adoption, and I will see you in the next one.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.